If you aren't feeding, you aren't trying. All right, so what do I mean by that? What I mean by that is in regards to limit testing. You can't learn properly and you can't improve to the maximum of your capabilities unless you feed a lot. And I don't mean just go run to the enemy team and die. I mean, do it intelligently and efficiently because you're testing the character's limits. I personally used to go play a lot of Winston back in Overwatch, and I would just play it on an alternate account and do literally anything for long periods of time. Didn't matter if they have every single counter possible, which they oftentimes did. I would play it anyway. And the thought process is basically if you can play it into the worst thing possible for it, you can play the character into the best thing even better. So we're going to watch this video real quick and talk about how our Turn A Gundam player here is able to do this, and how our Turn A Gundam ends up limit testing a lot, and how that goes for them. So we're playing on defense here on missile base, and right now the enemy team has a pretty standard team comp, no healing characters, but they have a GM Sniper, Zaku, Gun Tank, Sazabi, RX-78, and Pale Rider. So for the Turn A Gundam, the one that you'd have to watch out the most is going to be the enemy's GM Sniper. It'll beat you in a 1v1 in almost all circumstances, but that'll come into play in regards to how this limit testing works here. So you can see our Turn A Gundam player decides to peek twice on the GM Sniper. It's really important to pay attention to whether you have sights on you during that process. But since our Turn A Gundam did have the sights, he was able to do a sort of peeking here where you're getting maximum damage for your capabilities for your primary fire without actually peeking very much. You charge it up, you peek, you shoot, you back up, and in this circumstance, our Turn A Gundam did end up beating the GM Sniper, which is like I talked about, limit testing. It's just like learning, all right, maybe I can take this 1v1 in this circumstance, and in another circumstance right here, we're going to learn not to take that. In regards to running straight into a GM Sniper is probably not the best goal. Probably not the best strategy. But like I said, you don't really know that. You don't really know how it's going to affect one unless you play against them effectively and efficiently and for long periods of time. So yeah. This fight gets cleaned up, and our Turn A Gundam player decides to push really aggressively. This is a good play in general, just because it's good to retake these high grounds and get the choke back if you can. The rest of his team doesn't push with him, but recognize that and backs up. And obviously, like when I'm saying pushing the limits, it's not like, hey, right now go try and see if you can beat 3 people. Although our Turn A Gundam does try and do that essentially. With his ultimate, it doesn't quite get the kill and backs off, but it is just about having there be a possibility of seeing how that goes. So yeah, that's where we are in this situation. The team's all backed up onto the point right now. That's not very good. From a team perspective, you'd want to see them constantly pushing back up to retake the space. The choke down main is really, really valuable. I know enemies respawn quickly, but still be better. Again, another limit testing situation. Obviously, sprinting into a Sazabi player using funnels is usually not really a good idea. But there's times where you can push it. And if you let your limitations just tell you, okay, I'm not going to be able to beat this Sazabi, then you don't ever do that. But considering our Turn A Gundam player here did that, now they know that a Sazabi can be killed quite quickly as long as they're not paying attention to you and they get stunned like that. So, and unfortunately, our Turn A Gundam misses a lot of shots here. But yeah, I played a lot of Turn A Gundam myself. I thought it was super, super fun. I know it's not particularly amazing power-wise, but I thought it was really, really, really fun. And yeah, looking for little side flanks during this process is really good. As a side note, when you do hit someone with your grab, it is higher damage output overall to just hit primary fires onto it. You would think that charging up the big attack would be the most damage, but it's actually not. So make sure you're hitting regular primary fire damage. So now we're on attack. Attack players oftentimes do need to put themselves in more dangerous positions to get value out of it, and is where you're going to see a lot of the value from the limit testing. Just because it is a higher margin of error because you don't have the defensive advantage. We're poking at range. Poking at range is fine. It's just you have to understand that you're not always going to get a lot of kills. Like that Dom Trooper fed into our Turn A Gundam, which is fun, which is good because our Turn A Gundam is there, doing something with it. But you're always going to need someone to dive through the choke and take advantage of it, and open up space for you in 9 out of 10 situations. And particularly on a character like Turn A Gundam that has powerful long range damage or moderate long range damage and an aggressive grab close range capability, that's where a lot of the necessary experience comes, where you'll learn from playing the character how far you can and when what situations you need to use both capabilities. And like I said, honestly, even though I don't perfectly exemplify this in my own gameplay, if you're playing the game and you're really trying to improve, if you just play and you don't worry about winning, you don't worry about losing, and when you see an opportunity to try something, you just do it, you'll have a much better growth in the game. Unfortunate trade there. But yeah, you will grow so much more in the game just because you're not, sorry, I went backwards. You're not missing opportunities where you could be learning something. And like I said, when things matter, you're on your peak game or whatever, I don't really expect you to try and limit test too much. But just in standard gameplay, the more you limit test, it might hurt you in that circumstance, but as time goes on, you'll get a lot better. And that really is a lot of it's honestly a majority of what people need to improve on in low ranks. It's just their limit testing of the character and learning how the character works. And we learned that we can roll a RX-78 if we do it right there. We're about to learn that we can't roll a Sasapi with its shield. Using Turn A Gundam's grab into a Sazabi is kind of dangerous. Well, kind of made it really dangerous. It's because the shotgun is kind of asking to just deal a bunch of damage to you. So you have to be aware of that. That's something that I learned also playing Turn A Gundam. So you can catch him by surprise, great, but if not, you're going to tank at least 800 damage to the face with a headshot. I think it's actually 720, but whatever. So. But as I was saying, it's just, it's not to be a high level player, you need to have an amazing understanding of the game or just the most impressive knowledge of comp matchups and all that sort of stuff and everything like that. Usually it's just having solid mechanics through limit testing. Oh yes, getting shot behind the corner. Very good. Like I said, I hit 4,400 on Overwatch playing main tank just because I was good mechanically and I learned a lot of the limit testing stuff. Even then I wasn't nearly at the max capability, but my actual understanding of the game wasn't really particularly amazing. I didn't really understand how comps interacted with each other that much. I didn't really understand anything like that. I was just good at holding cooldowns when you needed to hold them and playing my life and moving in space properly and stuff like that. And that's really what the goal of this video is, to try and get onto you guys, is that when you're playing this game, when it's released, just make sure that you're trying to learn. The result doesn't really mean anything. I used to look at the game from, again, can't really do that to a Turn A or a Sazabi, but I used to look at the game as every loss I got was a loss, falling down on this ladder or this stack of rating I was pushing up. I felt like I was lifting it up, And every time someone took it away from me, it got knocked down a little bit. And I thought that's what it was ranked was. Every time someone threw my game or something like that was just 25 SR I was not going to have ever, basically. And that's not at all how it is. It's really more you have a skill level that you get to, and then you're holding it up, right? And then there's it's kind of hard to show. There's a string holding on to like a stack of things, and then your rating is anywhere between like the top or bottom of the certain rating. And the better you get, the more you just lift up that standard rating, like the average potential rating in those areas, the high and the low. Which for, you know, a game like Overwatch is usually about 300 SR on either side of whatever your true rating was. Which is also why people tend to get really upset and lose a lot of games, just because they climb up to their very, very peak because of good games or, you know, a lucky string of them. And then they lose a game and they keep going down, and they get down more towards like what their average rating is. And they feel like they should be higher. Like they hit GM for the first time and they're at 4,000, but they're actually like a 3750 average player. And they drop to 3750 and they're angry because they feel like they belong in GM, you know, and then they don't just put that aside and just get better. So yeah, guys, make sure that when you're playing the game in the future, you're just learning, just experiment. Who cares if you die, if you feed your brains out? As long as you're getting better at the game, everything's fine. Make sure to check out my Turn A Gundam guide right here. It's super, super good.